You know, it's really distracting when people are driving in the middle of a meeting.
Isn't it?
Hey.
Good morning.
Morning. Hello, everybody.
Good.
I don't know if you can tell, but it seems like Greg just got his hairs cut.
Greg.
Hair,
just got it
squirrel, there you go, Brian.
Well, some of you all have more than a single hair. Not me, but some of you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, Bert.
How are you?
Hello, Burton.
Hello, Greg. You look comfortable and relaxed in your car there.
I am on my way to the office.
Somebody's
Bert-
got to work, right?
I didn't tell you, Bert, but we start these meetings at 2 after. That is Greg's thing. So.
I'm well aware of that.
Oh, right. That's true. Guys, I almost
This is
feel
not
like
the
I'm
only
in
meeting I start 2
Minnesota.
minutes late.
What'd you say, Brian?
I said I almost feel like I'm in Minnesota.
It's a little chilly out there this morning.
It was okay, except for all the people walking around with like winter coats and stuff. I mean, come on, it's not even cold, right, Miriam? You're muted, Miriam. We're all thinking. We're all thinking of you. How are you doing?
I'm actually doing quite well. People have been so lovely, and yeah, she had a beautiful long life. So I'm really doing well. Thank you.
Actually, I don't know if everybody knows, but Miriam's
No.
mother passed away late last week.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Miriam.
Thanks, Bert. We had
Sorry to hear that, Miriam.
I was very worried about the whole Zoom funeral Shiva thing, and it was surprisingly like comforting and warm, and you know, it was incredible actually, with people from all over the country that would not have made it to a funeral in Minnesota in the middle of winter for sure. So it was surprisingly comforting. I didn't expect that. Yeah. So thank you. Anyway, let's move on to happier things.
Happier things like COVID.
Winter. Hi, Bert. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Miriam.
I was just asking Erica about you this morning.
Oh boy.
Oh, it's all good. She said he's got it. He's got it under control.
Good.
Aaron Sher, do you know, is David joining us this morning? I don't actually know. Do you?
I don't actually know, but I can text him right now.
There's absolutely no rush since we're gonna let Bert go first anyway, or Jessica or whoever. But we just, yeah. All right. No,
He was on a housing call at 9 because he assured me I did not need to be. So he may just be finishing.
that's fine too. All right, Greg.
All right. Well, it's 10:02, so it's the official start time. You'll forgive me if I don't look at the screen, but it's 60 miles an hour. That's really not a good idea. So happy Thursday, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. As we talked about in the past, we have Bert Garland on this morning, who is a member of the board of the Federation and in the labor law industry, and quite an expert at that. And so we've brought Bert on, and we'll have a presentation from him and then some questions. And in case you're just joining, because I can't see the participants, again, my condolences to you, Miriam, on your loss. It is, as many of us know, never easy. So our thoughts are with you. And unless anybody has any questions for me, I will turn it over to Brian.
Well, I don't have much. Obviously, we talked last month. People had questions about the vaccine and about being able to insist on it or request it or other things, which led it to a short conversation around finding somebody with some expertise that might be able to provide a little bit of guidance. As we have done once before, or maybe twice, we've asked Bert to join us. Bert is at Ogletree and is an employment and labor attorney. As Greg said, he's also on the board the Federation. He's been involved in a number of areas across the community and is always willing to step forward. A couple of you had some questions. I forwarded that one or those to Bert in advance. I just want to say in advance of him speaking too, right, like you should absolutely consult an attorney if you have really specific questions, your own attorney around this. Bert's really just going to give us, I think, kind of an overview and some thoughts and then answer some general questions. But, you know, things are changing rapidly all around us all the time. And there's always a difference between what we can do and maybe what we should do. And I just want to be careful that, right, like Bert, as a professional, can tell us what we can do. He may have personal opinions about what we should do, but I think that we should refrain from asking him maybe about what we should do and use our boards and each other to kind of gauge that kind of stuff. Unless, of course, Bert, you want to step in and give your personal opinion at any time.
Sure, I appreciate that, Brian.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that that Brian's exactly on point. That it really boils down to what we can do versus what we should do, and they may be the same or they may be different. But to kind of make this easy to start with, the question of can you require your employees to be vaccinated? And that goes, since a lot of you are places of public accommodation as well, can you require guests on your premises or at your places of employment to be vaccinated? The simple answer to that is, by and large, yes, you can. You can require people to be vaccinated in order to come onto your premises. That includes your employees, that includes guests, and you can even go a little bit further. You can require proof of vaccination. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission within the last few weeks has issued some guidance on this, saying that yes, absolutely, you can require proof of vaccination, that is not a medical examination under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the just simply requiring proof of vaccination. So that, for the most part, makes it easy. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to that, and really there's three notable exceptions, one of which hopefully won't be too applicable to Jewish Federation, but I'll still discuss it anyway. The first exception would be under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that if somebody has a health condition that would that makes it such that they should not be vaccinated, then we have to have an exception for that. So we cannot require an exception. We cannot require an employee, or frankly, even really a guest who has a health condition that would be exacerbated by the vaccine. Now, right now, I'm not aware of any such health conditions specifically. The only thing that I've seen out there have been some reactions people have had to the vaccines, and in particular to the Moderna vaccine. Apparently, people who have had facial fillers and lip fillers are having a negative reaction to the Moderna. Yes, I know. I see some people out there shocked with this. Some people have had negative reactions. Now, that doesn't necessarily rise to the level of a disability, but my point is that if somebody presents the issue to you, not that they've had facial fillers, I am trying to make a little bit of a joke here, but if they present the issue to you that they suffer from some sort of health condition and their medical provider has said you should not be vaccinated because of this health condition, then we have to move into what's known as the interactive process, or the individualized assessment with that particular employee, to determine whether or not we can accommodate them not being vaccinated, okay? And that gets into a deeper analysis that I'm not prepared to go into on the call today. If anybody wants to talk to me about that afterwards, I'm happy to address any specific situation, or if you have your own labor and employment counsel already, you can deal with that issue. That has to do with something that's called a direct threat analysis, whether the person who refuses to get vaccinated presents a direct threat either to their own health and safety, to the health and safety of their coworkers, or frankly, to the health and safety of the public at large. But the point being that you have to make that exception for people with disabilities who cannot be vaccinated, and then we can't just blanket exclude them from the workplace. We have to go through that interactive process with them to determine whether we can accommodate their refusal or their inability to be vaccinated. So that's exception number one. Exception number two is for pregnancy. Pregnancy in and of itself is not a health condition. Now, complications from pregnancy could be a health condition or a serious health condition, but pregnancy in and of itself is not a health condition. However, there are people who are out there who are saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated because I'm pregnant. And my healthcare provider has suggested that I don't get vaccinated because I'm pregnant. And I think, again, we're in a very similar analysis there, an individualized assessment to see if we can accommodate that refusal to be vaccinated. The third exception, which again may or may not really apply to a lot of the folks on the phone here, or on the call here, but I imagine we could run into a situation of it, is somebody who has a religious belief that prevents them from being vaccinated. This gets into a very touchy issue here. First of all, the religion and the religious belief has to be a mainstream religion. And it also has to be what's called a sincerely held religious belief. So if somebody is part of some sort of a mainstream religion here, they're not some offshoot and they're the only person in that particular religion, and they're claiming they can't be vaccinated because they follow the god of Orion's belt or something like that. They can't just make up a religion. It has to be some sort of a mainstream religion. And if that religion says that we do not vaccinate, we again fall into that category where we can't just blanket exclude the person from the workplace. We have to go through that individualized assessment to determine whether we can accommodate that belief. All of this to say that you can have, if you choose, you can have a policy saying we require all of our employees to get vaccinated and to have proof of a vaccination. You have to make those exceptions for religion, pregnancy, and other issues under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And if you do those things, you will largely be fine under the law. I want to point out one other thing that is significant here. I would strongly suggest to all of you on the program here that we as the employer not be involved in actually administering any vaccines or actually hiring somebody on our payroll to administer the vaccines. I would strongly suggest that you all hire a third-party entity to administer the vaccines. And Karen, I see you're nodding your head. You're a lawyer and a labor and employment lawyer, and so hopefully you're agreeing with what I'm saying here. And the reason why you want to do that is that the pre-screening questions that are asked before the vaccinations are administered, that could constitute what's known as a medical examination under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We as the employer don't want to be in a position of administering that pre-certification questionnaire and arming ourselves with certain information that might reveal employees' disabilities. If we hire a third party, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has said, if you hire a third party such as CVS or Walgreens or the local health departments, if the vaccines are being administered by those entities and they are administering the pre-vaccination questionnaire, then we are not arming ourselves with that information that might lead to us learning of an employee's disability. So again, I doubt that anybody was considering administering the vaccinations themselves or bringing somebody onto their own payroll to administer the vaccinations. Hopefully, if anybody's doing this, they're requiring employees to go get vaccinated somewhere, or at most we're contracting with a third party and we're making sure that that third party does not disclose any protected health information to us. Now, the final piece I want to share with you on this from the legal standpoint is that once the person gets vaccinated, we can, the EEOC has said, we can require proof that they have had the vaccination. That again does not constitute a medical exam under the EEOC's guidelines. And so if we are going to require our employees or guests to get vaccinated, we also can require them to provide proof that they have been vaccinated. Now, if they say they are not getting vaccinated, we have a right to go down that road with them to discuss, well, why aren't you being vaccinated? And then we're into that process to see if we can accommodate their refusal or their inability to get vaccinated. Now, all of this leads to the great question that Brian identified about 15 minutes ago, which is, now that we know we can do this, should we be doing this? I can tell you that anecdotally, I presented a program for my firm nationally about 7-10 days ago, and we had about 1,000 participants on the call, and we did a survey question. And I've also been presenting programs for AIM Management Association here in St. Louis, where we've got a couple hundred listeners on those programs, and we also asked the same question. And the question is this: are we planning to require employees to get vaccinated? And like I said, anecdotally, it seems to fall pretty close to probably 40% of employers saying, yes, we are going to require employees to get vaccinated, and probably 60% saying, no, we are not going to require employees to get vaccinated. And I'm ballparking those numbers. There's a lot of employers out there who have said they just haven't decided what they're going to do yet. But of the entities that have made the decision, I'm seeing it probably in the area of 40 to 60. Again, 40 saying they will require the vaccination, 60 saying they won't require vaccination. That's a pretty large discrepancy there on what employers are requiring. So I don't know if that gives you any guidance on, or maybe a little bit of guidance on whether or not you should be doing this. I personally feel, again, getting into my own personal opinion, Brian opened the door, so I will walk right through that. I feel personally that if you are an employer that has a workforce that works very closely together, like in perhaps even in a manufacturing environment, which none of you are, but a manufacturing environment where people aren't necessarily able to social distance. And if one person gets COVID-19, it could take down a line. I would err probably on the side of requiring the vaccinations. If you are in more of an office setting, which most of you are, and very importantly, if you are in a setting where most people can work remotely, then I don't think I would require the vaccination. One thing we've learned is that the vaccination is not going to be a magic or silver bullet to end the pandemic. That this is likely to go on for many months. I'm hearing that things probably, again, you all are reading a lot of the same things I'm reading here, but from some of our insiders in the firm in Washington, D.C. in particular, one of our chief lobbyists and chief governmental affairs attorney in Washington, D.C., he and I have been communicating pretty closely through the pandemic as I've become one of my firm's experts on some of these pandemic issues. He's hearing out of Washington, D.C. that things really aren't expected to return to normal until the fall at the earliest. So I think that we are seeing here that the vaccine is not going to be that silver bullet to just end everything. I think social distancing and masking and working remotely are still very important and viable options or requirements, depending on the case. And in light of those things, in the fact that you all operate in office settings, I'm not so sure I would require your employees to get vaccinated. So that's kind of a primer on where we stand with vaccinations, what the exceptions are to requiring the vaccination. I would suggest if you are going to require the vaccination, that you would develop a policy on this, just clearly explaining to employees what the policy is. This is not something I would place in your employee handbook by any means, because hopefully this is going to be temporary. This would be a standalone, separate pandemic-related kind of emergency policy. And I would kind of give some thought to how you're going to deal with these issues moving forward if you're going to require those vaccines. If you are not going to require the vaccines, I don't think you need a policy on this, but I would put some thought to how you are going to continue to deal with COVID-19 issues and positive tests as we move forward. Let me say one final thing, and then I will open it up to questions. Just to get everybody up to speed, the federal government, as part of the relief package signed into law by President Trump at the end of December, the leaves under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act were voluntarily extended through March 31st of this year. These are not necessarily new banks of leave. Under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, if the employee had not used up their 10 days last year, and we did not claim the tax credit for it, those 10 days are still available if we choose to make them available through March 31 of this year. The same thing basically with respect to the expanded FMLA. If the individuals did not use up the time last year and we did not seek a tax credit, we can voluntarily extend that through March 31st. Even if they did use up their time last year, depending on how we measure the FMLA year, it might be possible that they could have some additional leave available in this current year. So again, check with legal counsel on that or your HR folks on that. What I'm hearing out of DC, again, through our Chief Governmental Affairs attorney, is that as part of President Biden's next round of COVID stimulus, and Congress, just so you know, is sort of viewing that they have until March 31st to get the next round passed. This one's expected to be another $1.9 trillion bill with quite a bit of COVID relief. They are talking about extending the Families First leaves through September 30 of this year. So it run from the end of, from April through September. These would be new banks of leave, and they would apply not just to employers of fewer than 500 employees, they would apply to all employers across the country. Now, only employers with fewer than 500 would be able to get the tax credit, number one. And number two, this would also do away with the exemption that was put in place under the original Families First Act that said that employers with fewer than 50 employees don't need to comply with certain provisions. So that's what we're hearing out of DC right now. We'll have to see if that comes to fruition. But bottom line, I've kind of given you an update on the vaccination piece and a little bit on the Families First Act. And with that, I'm sure you have some questions. And while I can't provide legal advice on the call, I can certainly provide some guidance or suggestions on what you might consider. So how about I open it up after for that?
Thank you, Bert. Thank you. And obviously, I did see David Witten is on the call as well. In terms of questions or thoughts about the $1.9 trillion potential aid package, let's hold off on that. Let's focus with Bert on questions around the vaccination stuff. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask? Just either unmute or you can raise your hand. Yeah, hey, Joan.
Hi, thank you. So, given that there's no legislation that's protecting businesses and organizations from liability associated with, I guess, not doing their best to ensure people don't get sick, would that be one of the, because we do have some employees who are resisting the vaccination, and we've, but we're a senior living community, so our employees are in direct contact with vulnerable people, and they are also vulnerable to getting sick from the population, and they've still elected not to get the vaccine. So can we use that as a substantiation for why we are enforcing the need to get the vaccination, so that we haven't sort of performed in terms of ensuring it's a safe environment?
Yeah, thanks for that, Joan. And that's a great example of a situation where I would definitely say, if I were in your shoes, I would require the vaccinations. If you are working around a population that is particularly susceptible to severe consequences if they get COVID, and also given the proximity within which they work, the proximity to other people, patients, residents, et cetera, I would definitely be probably more aggressive in your situation on requiring the vaccine. You bring up a very good point that in Missouri right now, there are a few states out there that have put in place some legislation to protect employers from claims by employees related to COVID-19. This was a piece that was expected to be in the last coronavirus response bill at the end of September or December. It did not make it in there. So nationally, there is really no protection right now for employers. Pretty much, and even though I say that, pretty much everything is evaluated on what's called a gross negligence standard. And as long as you are following best practices out there, in other words, if you're adhering to the CDC guidance and the guidance of the state and local health authorities, the chances of you being liable to one of your employees is probably very slim. The other piece is that if you are liable to one of your employees, you're probably going to be liable in the workers' compensation realm versus a claim outside of workers' compensation. And so there's limits to the liability exposure you could face. But I think the bigger point to get to your point is that given your particular work setting, you're an even better example. I used a manufacturing setting where if somebody gets sick, the whole line could go down. I think you're an even better example that you're really in kind of a quasi healthcare position. And given the, again, the severity of the illnesses or the severity of COVID-19 in that population of the people you're serving, I would require those vaccinations and I would be aggressive on it.
Thank you. And conversely, couldn't the clients also sue the organization if we didn't have all of our, I mean, because that probably applies to more of the organizations as well. Like, is that the standard of care that we should be applying if we have direct interaction with the client base?
Yeah, no, another great comment there that, yeah, I think that you could face some liability. Now that liability would not be capped by workers' compensation, obviously, because they're not, that's not liability to the employees at that point. But again, even if you do face liability, I think you're going to be really on that gross negligence standard, as long as you are following the recommendations that are out there from the CDC and the state and local health authorities. And by the way, those recommendations are that people should be getting vaccinated. And so if you are saying to your employees, look, we don't want you in this facility unless you get vaccinated, you as the employer have a right to say that and to require that proof, subject to those 3 limitations that I shared with you earlier. So I think, again, that's another good point that you could face liability from the people that you serve.
All right. Any other questions? Do other people have questions?
Brian,
Ellen, go ahead.
hi, Burton. Thanks for this morning.
Of course.
I'm Ellen Alper. I don't know that we've met. I'm with the CEO of National Council of Jewish Women. My question's about the COVID PTO that you addressed earlier. In terms of following the CDC guidelines, you can take COVID PTO if you've been exposed, if you're caring for someone who's been exposed, or you have to quarantine for some reason, right? I mean, I think those are the 3 reasons.
There are 6 reasons total. One of the 6 is not used, so it really boils down to 5, but in essence, you're correct.
So someone takes a week of vacation, they get on a plane. CDC guidelines says when you get off a plane, you're supposed to wait 4 to 5 days, get a COVID test. When it comes back negative, you can return to the workplace. On whose dime is that PTO?
It's on the individual.
So that is not considered COVID PTO because they're voluntarily getting on a plane.
Correct.
I just wanted to double check. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. That's a question I've gotten very frequently throughout the pandemic. Now it's different if they actually get COVID, if they test positive, even though it's related to activity of them getting on the plane. If they actually have COVID, then it becomes a situation where they would be covered from under the PTO, the expanded, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. Other questions? See one came in on chat here.
In the chat, if you require the vaccine and someone does not want to receive the vaccine and has not met one of the 3 reasons not to get the vaccine, can you fire them?
The very simple answer to that is yes. Okay. I again just want to make very clear that you should go through that interactive process with the employee, that dialogue with the employee to find out why they are not getting vaccinated. And once you confirm that they don't fall within those 3 reasons, you could tell the employee that, look, we have made the decision that we can't continue to employ you if you are going to refuse to get the vaccination.
Brian, I think I will ask my 2 quick questions. I asked, but can we require that some people get it and others not based on their position and their need to protect clients?
Absolutely. And but that's one of those things I would have a little forethought to it in your policy and describe why some people are required to get it and some others aren't. If you have people who are strictly doing what I would maybe call back office work, or even better, if they're working remotely and they're not coming to the office, that's certainly a distinction. If you have certain of your employees who are actually counseling with people out in the community and interacting closely with people in the community, then yeah, you have an absolute distinction there.
And we see seniors also. And my other quick question is, if we're not going to require it, which we're probably not, but we can still ask people if they got it, can't we? Because we will want to kind of monitor if we've got a critical mass of people who are.
Correct. And I would also suggest that you should probably hopefully you're all having people go through what's been deemed the self-certification procedure, at least on a daily basis, which is that every day people know that they should not be coming into work if they have been around somebody who's a confirmed COVID case, they're experiencing symptoms. There's about 2 or 3 questions that you should be asking that to make sure that people are monitoring their own health condition closely and not reporting to work if they have any of those conditions.
Okay, great. Does anyone, Ellen, you asked about policies. Are you asking about policies related to vaccinations specifically? So Ellen's asking if anybody has developed anything, if we could share it. I'm sure that we can find a way. If you want to get them into us, we can communicate them out to everyone for sure.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Bert? Bert, I don't want to, I don't know how much. So if not, we're going to transition. So first of all, Bert, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Stay on if you'd like. Otherwise, have a really good day.
Thank you. I'm going to drop off. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me for a half hour here. Talk to you later.
Bert. Thank you. It was really helpful. So we're going to transition. Bert talked for a minute about the $1.9 trillion aid package. That generally falls into someone else's wheelhouse that we have on. So David, welcome. And we look forward to hearing what's going on.
Yeah, I'll try and touch on that. I think that's a little bit in the ether right now. That's probably more of a late February, early March timeframe. So I want to go through some of the things that are happening right now that I think are of interest. We talked on the last call about the money that came into Missouri for rental assistance. For anybody, any of our congregational rabbis, for any of our social service agencies that have people coming in, Missouri got a roughly $400 million in rental assistance that can be provided to individuals. Mostly it should be provided to the landlords. And we had a number of questions about that. So I have a quick breakdown that I can give you. St. Louis County was one of 7 jurisdictions that was able to apply for direct assistance from the federal government. So they got an allocation of roughly $30 million. I spoke with Cora Faith Walker yesterday about what she was planning on doing with that money. They're putting together an RFP right now to go out almost immediately that will hire somebody to create an application process that can take landlord requests, but also My understanding is we'll take individual requests. And so for Miriam or for our congregations, we might have a source of revenue that we can simply just apply on behalf of the individual for, because I know right now we're spending philanthropic dollars on this service. That, my guess is that will be available in the next 2 weeks. I did inquire about getting reimbursement for that. The problem is that the money was made available by the federal government on a date certain. So any money that was expended prior to that is not eligible for reimbursement, it looks like. Although I have made a number of kind of comments about some of these things to see if we can move around. The other important part of this is 10% of that $400 million is available for case management services. So we know that the big statewide agency that will be administering assistance for all the jurisdictions with the exception of, with the exception of those 7 jurisdictions, they're going to put out an RFP very quickly to see if anybody is in the community that can do case management for these folks to ride along with it. And so just keeping in mind, they have about $320 million total. So their case management allocation will be around $30 million. So it will be significant. It is not clear. Right now they're planning on doing it for everybody outside those 7 jurisdictions, but it's very possible they will end up doing it inside those 7 as well. So that's something we're going to look out for very closely. In order for this money to be allocated at all, the General Assembly has to allocate the dollars through a supplemental appropriation. And so that's happening right now. There's a lot of consternation about giving the executive branch carte blanche authority to spend all the money that's come in. I think most people agree the rental assistance piece actually is a piece that you could allocate out without too much concern. So I think that will go. My guess is that in the next 10 days, that money will be available for consumption by the public. So that will come out, and I'll keep everybody posted in terms of what St. Louis County looks like and where we're headed with that. So I'm going to stop there for just a second and see if anybody has any questions about rental assistance. Okay. So vaccine rollout, we've been fielding a lot of questions on that. The only way I can describe this is a total dumpster fire, as everybody on this call knows. We are doing our best to field questions one at a time. It's almost the only way that we can get any kind of answers. Lynn, you and I were on the phone. I don't know if Lynn's on the call or not yesterday. We hope we've gotten that issue resolved. I know some of the organizations like Covenant have been able to vaccinate, which is excellent. But if folks have need or concern, please get a hold of us. We'll try and field questions. I believe that the Department of Health and Senior Services is going to use the J as a vaccination site for an event. When they come out and do adult daycare and the rest of those folks, that's the plan, at least at this point. So I assume we'll keep everybody posted on that as it rolls through. So we should hear something on that today as well. So those are the 2 kind of main areas that we're very focused on right now. Employment, unemployment benefits are available right now. The additional benefit from the federal government, checks have been going out. And so I think about half of all the checks, if not more, for $600 per person have already gone out. Most people are receiving them at this point. Let me touch for a second on the $1.9 trillion package that Bert alluded to. This is the number the Biden administration has put on it. It's a little bit misleading because it's not 1.9 trillion for COVID relief. It's 1.9 trillion total. It probably includes almost $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, and it will include things like state and local government assistance. We expect to hit somewhere around $200 billion. Just for a frame of reference, that means Missouri is going to get around $3.5 billion plus. That money should be available to use as general revenue, which will go to the state treasury. Right now, Missouri is sitting on $1.8 billion in the state treasury, which is about 6 times its normal fund balance. And that's because of the federal money that's been made available. So we do expect a package. I would be very surprised if we didn't get one at the end of February, early March that goes out, and it will go out quickly. Part of that package is also being discussed as an extension of additional dollars to individuals. They're talking about $1,200 checks. These things mount up very quickly. The $600 check costs the federal treasury $160 billion. So you can do the math and know that a $1,200 check is $320 billion. So these numbers are going to kind of ramp up quickly. I fully expect additional dollars to be available for vaccinations and vaccination sites, contact tracing, and testing. Bert's absolutely right. The word right now is return to normalcy, and normalcy is kind of in brackets, by early fall, assuming things are moving in the right direction. The federal government just purchased another $200 million, 200 million doses from Pfizer. Production is moving quickly. In fact, Pfizer just upped their production rate by contracting with Sanofi, and I know Moderna is doing the same. We're still probably several months away from having a single dose vaccine. And so we do expect that to happen. And that will probably be the vaccine that is allocated toward Africa, Asia, and other markets where 2 doses is extremely complicated to pull off, and refrigeration that's required is very hard to come by. So things are moving at the federal level. It's really clear. Miriam, I know you know Mark Slavitt. He is firmly taking control of the COVID response at this point, and I think that's going to bode well for the country. He's a very able administrator. He's proven himself a number of times. So I think that's all good. So that's what Miriam.
Andy Slavitt.
Well, what did I say? I'm sorry.
Mark, it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
In case somebody looks them up.
Yeah.
He's doing great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and he's been in a number of roles at the federal level, and he's really, people really like this guy. Okay, so let me move back to the state. So that's what we've got on vaccine. The governor delivered his State of the State address yesterday. Most of the stuff that we anticipated was there. We have an Office of Early Childhood, so we don't want to lose sight of all the other stuff that's happening in additional to COVID. That Office of Early Childhood right now is going to be housed within the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and it's going to pull over all the daycare spending, all of the home visitation monies that are available, and a number of other programs that deal basically from 0 to 5. And the kind of the designation line is they're non-child welfare programs. So they're not foster care, they're not residential treatment, those kinds of things. So that is in full force right now, and they're moving in that direction. And I'm sorry, I'm using a very good friend's office in the Capitol, and he's been very generous about that. So I want to be quick here. So the other thing that he put in, as we expect, is all of Medicaid expansion. So he put in the full contingent of Medicaid expansion dollars. So that is out in the open. We are moving forward. And then the other piece that was of interest is a lot of additional funding in mental health. So there's additional expansion for mental health, healthcare homes. There's additional dollars in for regional centers for law enforcement to take people that are having mental health issues. So they're not taking them to jail and they're not taking them to emergency rooms. So there is some emphasis on this. We're still pulling this thing apart. We don't actually have the detail behind these. We just have the high line numbers, but he spent a lot of money in this budget. So some of the Republicans are going to start gnashing their teeth a little bit that he's spending too much money and it's not sustainable, but it looks like he's trying to spend some money to get things in the right place and put in the right frame so that he can begin consolidating and saving dollars over the long run, which I think most people would see as a very positive thing. So I'm going to stop there and ask if anybody has any questions that we can answer. We'll obviously keep providing information as time goes on.
Any questions for David about any of that? Right? You talk for like 10, 15 minutes and then nobody has any questions.
It works every time.
Yeah, right. No, honestly, does anybody have any questions about anything David brought up or anything that you've heard or are wondering about related to policy, federal, state stuff? Thank you, David.
You bet. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks,
You
man.
too. There's nothing else on our agenda. So the question is there anything else that anybody wants to share, either in the chat, as Karen Scher just did, about Jewish Disability Awareness Month, or JDAM, as we call it, or anything? Karen, did you want to share something more, or was that good?
I think that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody's aware it's a free. You can sign up. There's lots of different programs throughout February, kicking off with Yitzhak Perlman on February 3rd. Just very interesting, and just I would explore it if you're interested.
Anything else anybody wants to either share or bring up? Anything that people are seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing, or just want to touch base with others on? Scott, it seems like everything went okay locally over the last week or two, and I know that there was a general kind of bulletin put out. Anything that we all need to be thinking about or concerned about?
Well, everything has gone at least somewhat well over the last couple of weeks since the inauguration and prior to. But to reference the bulletin that went out, just to give you some sort of an idea of the seriousness of the bulletin, there hasn't been a DHS bulletin issued like that in over a year. So for the Department of Homeland Security to issue a bulletin like that, it basically implies that they do have concerns about the state of things in terms of activity. And there have been a number of arrests recently, not only of folks with that were at the Capitol, that committed crimes at the Capitol, but also of people who were actually plotting to target the people who were committing the crimes at the Capitol. So, it's kind of all over the place. And I think that's their concern, is that there's just a lot of diverse activity going on right now. The biggest thing for our community is constant awareness and vigilance, making sure that we're following our own internal security procedures, that we're reporting suspicious activity, and that we're, just keeping a general eye out for those types of things. Nothing at this point in time is too small to report to me.
Great. All right. Anybody else have anything they wanted to talk about or bring up or share? Anna Marie, my assistant, will be back in just a couple weeks. And at that point, we will take off those once a month for the next 3-month Thursday meetings in order to make room for the capacity building identified seminars that'll happen on Wednesdays from noon to 1, open to you, your staff, your volunteer leadership, anybody who wants to participate in the 3 areas that we talked about. If people have additional questions about that capacity building report, Mindy or Nava can absolutely answer them. I think that's all I have, Greg.
Unless anybody has anything else, I assume this is right, or somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. This is a happy Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is a happy festival of the trees and the sampling of fruits. I hear upwards of 15 varieties for certain levels of observance. So I hope you all enjoy Tu B'Shvat. Happy early Shabbat, and always be in touch if you need anything or have any questions. And Brian, we'll see you next week. I think I'll be on the road and not like I was today driving, actually out of town. So I probably will not be on next week, but it's probably no great loss. So great to see you all, and have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.